Hi, everybody. It's Warren Hewitt here, and in this episode, we're going to talk about 3 EQ mistakes we all make. Hope you're all doing marvelously well. This is going to be fun because I think we're all guilty of this. I've certainly been guilty of all these 3 things. The first one is this: overusing sweep EQs. I can't remember the last time I used a sweep EQ. Simple as that. I may have done it in a video fairly recently where I was just trying to point out something. I realized, though, as a beginner, you are encouraged by everybody to use sweep EQs. I watch every other video and I see somebody boosting an EQ and moving it across like this. I will illustrate it for you. So here we have a song by Steve McGora, and I've got this guitar part, for instance. Have a listen to this.
So take me down again, moaning, screaming, don't pretend.
Start of the guitar. It's nice, but you could argue it's a little kind of honky, isn't it? I haven't done any EQ to it. It's how I recorded it. We're going to go for a 6-band EQ here. And I'll just grab this EQ point here. Let's tighten the Q so it's super, super narrow. Engage the EQ. And you guess it, let's boost it. And we're going to sweep along. Oh, that's ugly sounding, isn't it? So that's 200. Let's keep going. Oh, that's ugly too, 275. Oh, that's horrible, 324. All right, so let's start with that first one, 200. And this is the logic of it, isn't it? Let's go back to that 275 that we just thought was absolutely horrible. Let's have a listen to that. Now we're going to create another sweep. Oh, that's ugly. Oh, let's get rid of that. Let's create another quick one. Oh, ugly. Ugly, horrible. Ugly. Let's cut some of that. Oh, we still got 1 band left. Let's grab that last band. Oh, horrible. All right, here is a before. Here's an after. Wait there, it doesn't sound better. In fact, it sounds lifeless and horrible. The point is, if I take any EQ band and boost it 5, 10, 15, 20 dB, no matter how narrow it is, I will keep sweeping around, and I don't have to move very far for something to be completely and utterly obnoxious. Do you know why it's obnoxious? Because the frequency's too loud. I mean, the whole principle of sweeping frequencies with big high boosts like that to find something that sounds terrible. You could end up with literally 20 cuts. You could put another EQ, another EQ, another EQ, and you'd be amazed by the time you've actually rebalanced the output on your plugin and you put 4 plugins in a row. If you're lucky, you'll end up with the same sound you started with. But what you'll probably end up with is this incredibly horrible, weird, phasey mess of disgustingness. If you are hearing something horrible, that's when you look for it. But when you're merely sweeping to find bad things, you're always going to find bad things. What you need to do is trust yourself. Trust your ears. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or a seasoned professional. In some ways, quite frankly, a beginner, young, with wonderful hearing, is going to hear ugly frequencies. So if you hear something that's bothering you in the mix, let's have a listen.
So take me down again, moaning, screaming, don't pretend. When I hear my name through grit.
I mean, what I'm hearing on that guitar, I could take out some low mids because I feel like to myself, well, it sounds thick, and other times things are getting a little lost. But you know what? That might be compression. Maybe I just need to compress some of those hits a little bit, push them back in, and bring up some of the low stuff. It is trusting yourself to make decisions based on what you hear. And you'd be surprised. There is a certain level of professionalism. We've done this a million times before, and we reach for EQs and we know what we're doing. But at the same time, you're young, you've got great hearing. That's a beautiful place to be in. Trust your ears. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this 1 year or 20 years or whatever. Trust your hearing. Listen for something that sounds offensive in the mix. And if it's not offensive, don't go looking for things to be offensive. You will find any frequency boost, 5, 10, 15, 20 dB like this, is going to be quite offensive. And if you do that, you'll end up with a really soft, really boring mix. Number 2, not using high and low passing. This is pretty huge. You get tracks to mix. They could be organic. They could be completely programmed, virtual. You're going to have a lot of build-up in certain frequencies. And of course, in that low end, that sort of 20 hertz up to about 200, it can be an absolute mess. I guarantee it is a horrendous mess when all EQ is bypassed. So that's where you go in and you start getting creative. If it's an organic sounding track, so I've got a kick sub here, I'm boosting 63 hertz, which is like the fundamental of that kick drum. I'm cutting a little bit of 31, so I'm focusing it there. I'm also actually cutting some 125, but I've done a little high passing there, so I'm actually high passing underneath the kick. I've got my toms, high passing here. So when the toms are ringing, I'll go woo, 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 all the way down there where the kick lives. My snare drum, high passing here at 88. Again, no need for low rumble, bleed into the microphones. Absolutely no problem doing that. Even on my bass guitar, I've high passed gently at just about 60 where it is, but I'm doing it gently before going into a boost and then high passing again at about 50. So I'm shaping the low end. It's going to be there. There's going to be low end below 50 hertz, but it's going to be shaped beautifully so there's room for the kick to live in. This is really, really helping my mix. So maybe on the guitar, the smartest thing would have been to do is actually this. Go and do some high passing. I've got some low end build up. Below 90, I don't really need. Now there's zero low end now in the kick drum. There's no overlap in that area. That's great. Throw in the bass. So that high passing is really helped for me. It's cleaned up the low end. Now let's go to our Nord part here. And I've got a lift in the high end, but you can see I've got a gentle high pass at about 140. I don't have much high end going on up there, but what I've done is I've introduced a nice gentle curve up there. And if I want to grab this and make it a 4-band EQ, I can do that. So what I've done now is I've now low passed. So that Nord that has almost no high end in it, I've got rid of it above the area where I'm trying to just give a gentle lift. Now let's think about the same thing here on the guitar. So we'll go to 6 here. Now we're low passing again. There's occasional high end on 8K there. Maybe do a little bit of lift. Too much, getting a little harsh. So I've done more with high passing and low passing on that than anything else. It's such a powerful, powerful tool. There's a lot of confusion about it, but high passing and low passing and gentle EQ moves are really, really useful. So if I'd taken and sweeped through any of these instruments, I would have found tons of offensive frequencies. But once again, you've got to trust your ears and decide whether they're offensive. And if you're listening to an instrument and you're not hearing any reason for it to have excessive low end or excessive high end, get rid of it. Get rid of it out of the mix and you'll create some real clarity. We talk many, many times how a lot of late 90s, early to sort of mid-2000 mixes, before the advent of the wonderful cell phone and earbuds, a lot of them don't translate anymore. And they're by hugely famous mixes. And part of the late 90s, like rock and emo scene was a very, very bright overhead shimmering for excitement, which was very trendy. I remember driving along, listening to K-Rock on the radio, and everything seemed to sound like shh, especially on choruses. Now with those records, in the world of earbuds, small phones, tiny little speakers, there's so much high end going on there. So the thing you'll find now is with the great mixers, especially people coming up now who are very, very aware of how people listen to music, high end is really, really well sculpted, and low passing is in full effect. You open up a Bob Horn mix and it's like he is getting in there, like, I wouldn't say building puzzles, but he's definitely controlling the high end really beautifully. And instruments have a lot of detail, so don't underestimate low passing. It's really, really useful. So number 3, applying EQ to solve a problem which isn't there all the time. This is such a common one. Going back to this guitar part here, for instance. So I don't mind you doing this. Listen with your ears to the guitar part, and also at the same time, look at the EQ. Because I'm trying to prove a point here. Obviously, listening's the only thing that's important, but combine it with looking at the EQ for a second. Okay. Those notes are moving all around about, let's just say about just under 200 to, about 2K at the most. But a lot of it, the part is around there. So you're hitting single notes. Single notes are being played and they're peaking on frequencies. My point is if I go in there, for instance, where I thought it was a little muddy before, and I pull out some 200, because when I swept, it told me I should be pulling that out. So I pull it out and I'm listening to the groove here. The problem is when it went to those low notes, they got too quiet because the low notes have just been cut. So let's just say I went really, really nuts and had cut some of those nasty high mids before, and maybe done it gently, didn't go absolutely crazy. Some of those high notes that have been playing out would also be out of balance. I have to be careful about these choices. There's a lot of amazing plugins out there that do dynamic EQs. Or alternatively, if you did want to cut this low mid area on the guitar a little bit, which I think is not a bad idea, do this. Go to auto, and come in on band 2 here, on, off, and automate it. Because when I'm playing that high note solo, I don't want the low end to be removed from it. I need that support. I need it in there to make those high notes have some body. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab it here, and now it's off. So let's find the entrance of the solo. So I'm cutting on the rhythm, and then I am pulling it back in on the guitar solo. What's interesting is I made a mistake there, but it was really good because even in the track, you can hear how it ruined the lead part when it was still in there, that EQ cut. Have a listen. Listen to that, woo, that low note just came in with body. So now let's hear the whole lead part with the body put back in. Oh, beautiful.
Heaven knows you're what I need.
On this rhythm guitar, I've done a bit of a low mid muddiness cut. And then when the lead comes in, the low mid muddiness cut disappears and allows me to give a bit more body on that lead part. There's a part of me that might even push some of that low mid up. So this is where we have to be careful. If we always apply EQ on the basis of like, oh, there's too much of it here, there's too much of it there, on a chord that might seem like a smart idea. We might say it's too thick in the low mids on this guitar chord. But if the same guitar player plays an arpeggio immediately afterwards and concentrates on the high strings, and suddenly all the low end or the low mids that were there that were reinforcing that beautiful high line are taken away, the guitar gets really narrow and really thin. So you have to be selective of where you apply the EQ, and don't be afraid to automate. Thanks ever so much. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave me a whole bunch of comments and questions below. What are the sort of EQ do's and don'ts that you find really huge? To me, these might seem quite simple, but they are the fundamentals that I apply to every single mix. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Please hit the like button. And of course, if you haven't subscribed to Produce Like a Pro, and we'll see you all again very soon. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, and adios. Goodbye.